and consume food. I'm really honored to be with you today to discuss how we can balance the plate to establish healthier diets for a more sustainable world. We have a great conversation planned, so I would just want to quickly introduce our panelists and then dive into discussion. So we have my very good and old friend, Sarah Reversi, the president of the Future Food Institute. We have Alexandre Geller-Paris, or Paris, Paris, the secretary of the high-level working group on nutrition and health of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And we have Emmeline Fellis, the director of food and agriculture at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Please give them a round of applause. We want to keep the energy going, especially this late in the afternoon.
Let's wake up.
So Sarah, I've known you the longest. I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
There is an obvious need to connect climate and health and biodiversity loss and all of the other things, but we don't do that often enough with our food and agriculture systems, connect climate, health, and food and agriculture. And I'm wondering how we can make those linkages in a way that can really influence policy, that can influence the way businesses act and the way eaters consume food.
I love this question. This is the reason why we're all here. So we at the Future Food Institute, we started, as you know, 10 years ago, being very much focused on not creating one solution, but creating an ecosystem. Ecosystems are tough to manage because to make sense, ecosystem needs to be open. An ecosystem needs to be, say, diverse, involve different generations, involve big and small, involve different countries, involve public and private, talk with the kids and talk with the centennial people. And we started doing that, creating an ecosystem that is based on three main areas. The first one is education, knowledge, and research initiatives. The second one, we created living labs. Living labs where things are happening because, of course, we have been hearing a lot of very nice keywords in these years, but I really love to show examples and to bring people in the campus and see, okay, what's the carbon capacity of this soil? And what are the nutrients of this soil? And let's see what's the health level of this person who's eating every single day this food compared to another one. So we need examples, we need data, we need to build the trust. And to build the trust, you need to do things. And this is, say, the second arm. The third arm is our R&D team developing projects. So I spent my 10 years just flying around when I met her. That was starting the food tanks as well. And we were really talking since day one, before the SDGs were announced. I think that 2015 has been the game-changing year for all of us. SDGs were announced. We had the World Expo in Milan for the first time, feeding the planet, energy for life. These were the four words connected. And then always 2015, Pope Francis with the Laudato Si, and always 2015, COP21. So 2015, I think, at least for us, was a game-changing year. So since that time, we started taking the Integral Ecological Development Framework that was presented actually in the Laudato Si book of Pope Francis, but then taken back in the book that is a dialogue between Carlo Petrini, slow food leader, and Pope Francis, where they are actually taking integral ecology and splitting these 6 areas, starting from the political action, then regenerating the environment, and then the human perspective, and then the social perspective, and then preserving living heritages and the cultural pillar, and then the economic balance between all of those different wheels.
Right.
And then we started from there, and we said, okay, we need a platform. And we created a campus where this is happening. And we started taking this as a framework, and we use that every time that someone is asking us, it's good lab-grown meat or not? It's good to go for these solutions or not? And this is needed, and the platform is open. And it's tough because we're going to take time, because the policymakers we are working with, they know that they're not going to be elected again thanks to these decisions, because the decisions they're taking today, they're going to show their outcomes probably in 10 years. And so it's not going to be anymore their time. So now we need to break this silo, bring everyone together, and tell them and show them that the responsibility that they're taking is going to be farther beyond the outcome that they can show. So this is the toughest part.
So Sarah, it's easy to say that we're breaking silos, but when you're actually doing it, how do you do that with policymakers and get them to listen in a way that they know they won't be reelected if citizen eaters don't, if they're not following sort of the orders of citizen eaters, right?
What is happening is that we are showing them really what is happening. We are taking them and living these experiences. The boot camps we are running, the unconferences we are running, are showing that this is the most powerful thing that we have been discovering, doing things. We had the Deputy Secretary General of the UN seated with the student, seated with the farmer and the fisherman and the delegate from the European Commission that is deciding the new law about how we're going to manage our sea. And he never spoke one day with a fisherman. And this is the thing.
Right,
Sometimes
right.
people that are designing our policies,
They don't know the real.
they don't know the real. And it's not easy. It's easy to say, but you need to create safe environments for them, both of them. Because on one hand, you have fishermen and farmers that are pissed off. They don't believe, they don't trust the policymakers, the politicians. They don't trust even us, saying, okay, you're talking about cool innovations, but then nothing happens. Our life is always like that. Our sons don't want to take over our farm. Our sons want to fish anymore.
Or our daughters.
Exactly, or sons or daughters or whatever. But this is the thing. And when they face around the table with the policymakers start, they don't have answers sometimes.
Right, right.
And say, I didn't know.
Right.
I have no idea. And this is the problem. But things are happening
Right.
when you're able to surprise people, to bring them in a deep emotional conversation and creating connection.
Yep.
And to build the trust, you need that. And you need to have real experiences. We're not going to build trust creating nice design and infographics. This is not the way on how you build trust.
Thank you, Sarah. And I want to come back to the emotional connection and the real experiences in a minute, but I want to turn to Alex on this theme of silo breaking, because I think it's so important in the work that you do with the UN Global Innovation Hub, because we don't think of technology and innovation always supporting farmers and fishers and others. And I want you to talk a little bit about what the hub does to make sure that those folks are supported.
Exactly. So first of all, Daniele, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm
Oh,
very
thank
happy
you.
to be here with this distinguished panel. So the Innovation Hub, so before, let me go back to what Sarah has said, the year 2015. Let's bring us back to the Paris Agreement itself. In Article 10 of the Paris Agreement, it highlights, it enshrined in the Paris Agreement, the importance of innovation. So how innovation, how accelerating and encouraging and enabling innovation is critical. These are the words, for an effective and long-term response to climate change. So that's where innovation, where we take the idea of innovation from the Paris Agreement, and within the UNFCCC Secretariat, and now is a whole movement of partners, we launched at COP26 in Glasgow, the Global Innovation Hub. And what's the Global Innovation Hub? Why we are doing this? So basically, was to tackle the question of ambition. There's a lack of climate ambition in all levels. So there's a lack of climate ambition in parties. You can see this from the commitments are not enough. But parties, within parties, companies also, their ambition is not enough. And even subnationals, their ambition is not enough. So we question why? Why the ambition is not enough? And the answer we come up with is that there's a gap. So when decision makers in the different instances are making the decision of their ambition, they do that based in what is perceived as possible. And that's understandable, right? Because their credibility depends on that. But that's not enough. They need to do their ambition based on what is needed. So the gap from what's possible, from what is needed, is what the innovation hub is trying to tackle. That's where we are, what we are trying to achieve. So we brought together an amazing group of partners to develop this initiative, and we have 3 core values. And our values are caring, sharing, and daring. When I say caring, I mean about caring. What's relevant for us is caring about the people, caring about the planet. I think most of the people care about the wrong things, caring about the animals. When I say sharing, we are based on the principle of sharing knowledge, sharing experience. One of our core partners is, for example, this institution called Frontiers. They are the third largest academic publisher and entire open source. So the concept of open source in science is very key for how we deliver our work. And our last core value is daring. So daring is be bold, try to be different, moonshot thinking. And we are bringing this to the UN environment, and that's very unique.
So how does that work when we're talking about the climate crisis and healthier diets?
So we brought together to support us an amazing group of individuals, which is the high-level working group on nutrition and health. And you, Daniela, is one of them.
Thank you,
We
yes.
have 15 individuals from very diverse background. And I think that's where the magic happens. So just to mention a few of these individuals, we have academics, top academics, Professor Joaquin from Braun from the University of Bonn, Osara Asafa, she's from the University of Bangladesh. So we have this diversity of views. Walt Willett, a Harvard professor from the School of Public Health. So we bring the academic perspective in this group, the UN perspective with a representative from the World Food Program. We have also think tanks such as Food Tank, but also Dr. Grunhill, Bruce Friedrich, and innovators, people who are like bringing new ideas to the plate. Paul Newhan, for example, he runs this program called the Chef Manifesto, to interact directly with chefs and changing the recipes for a healthier diet. And at the end, we have business, private sector, corporations, and startups. So Patrick Brown, founder of the amazing Impossible Foods, is part of this group, also on plant-based alternatives. And we have three amazing representative of companies with this new wave of cell agriculture. One is here in the back, and she's the chair of our group, Lee Recht from Aleph Farms. We have also Mark Post from Mossa Meat. He's a pioneer. I mean,
absolutely.
The burger in 2013 blew the mind of most people.
Sure.
And last but not least, Josh Tedrick, the first one who is selling cell-based meat.
Thank you for explaining all of that. It's really exciting to see bringing all of these different people together, breaking down those silos. Emmeline, with this continuation of this theme about breaking silos, the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, you do that within companies, and I think that's so important and strategic. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, how we, using the power of those companies who would otherwise probably not talk to one another, but bringing them together in a non-competitive environment, how that works for when we're talking about creating healthier diets that can help fight the climate crisis.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yes. I actually have one of my members here in the room that was not foreseen, but he's going to be able to talk about how we work with our members, actually. So WBCSD is a member-based organization. We work with 250 companies, and we have a strong angle on food and agriculture. We've been trying to indeed help the companies and support them and motivate them to have much more higher levels of ambition, but also accountability. So, what you shared earlier really resonated. I think for all of the stakeholders, finding ways to raise the level of ambition and also be accountable for progress is really important. And so there is definitely a lot of interest from the companies from different angles in tackling this question of more healthy and sustainable diets. It's about delivering against their greenhouse gas emissions targets. So I don't know if you're familiar with the World Benchmarking Alliance, WBA. They rank and rate the companies every 2 years on their progress. And so we can see the glass half full or half empty when we realize that out of 350 companies, half of them have disclosed climate targets, and half of them have not. So really, our role is to help the companies in actually disclosing those targets and then meeting them, of course. And so tackling the question of diets, I think everybody here is familiar that for greenhouse gas emissions, as much as for biodiversity, there are three main levers to really achieve change in the food and ag space. It's about better practices. So, the new word of regenerative agriculture, we can call it positive agriculture, sustainable agriculture. We can open a big Pandora box here, but really reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the production side. The second is food loss and waste, because 30% of what we produce today still goes to waste. And last but not least is healthy and sustainable diets. So for any company to be able to meet its target, it needs to actually look at those 3 layers. I would say that on is that okay?
I'm
Maybe
just going to interrupt you. I'm going to get a handheld mic. I think it's me who's causing the problem. Is that okay? It's her? Okay. Emmeline, it's your fault. I was going to take responsibility.
Yeah. Should I just drop this?
Yes.
No, we cannot. No.
Just pass this down to Emmeline, please. Alex, sit in your chair. Okay. Emmeline, Emmeline has her mic.
Good. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. So, and by the way, we have Brian Griffith here, who also leads one of our member companies. It was not planned, but I just saw you, and he's one of our champions. He's the chairman of Griffith Food, and it really can talk to you about the barriers, but the levers as well for a company to act. One of the things that we've identified when we talk about accountability is if we want to enable the member companies to really deliver, we need to find a way to better connect what the shareholders, the investors are asking, and the sustainability targets of the companies. So a big piece is around accountability. How do we make sure that there is clear ways to communicate the carbon-related accountability needs?
Sure.
And how do we make sure that investors care about this and increasingly will support the companies that actually, walk the talk? So for us, it's a big thing. And
let me interrupt you there. What does it mean to walk the talk when we were talking about accountability then?
right. So walk the talk is it's in the question of accountability is that you can have targets, but then the question is, are you delivering?
Right.
And I liked what you said, but I think it's complex because I remember exchanging a lot with Unilever. I guess most of you are familiar with Unilever. Unilever used to set very ambitious targets and often not be able to meet them in the end because they were too high. And then I remember discussing with another company who said, we never do that. We only commit to targets that we know we can achieve. You can debate that because, there is pros and cons about both. I understand that if you have high ambition targets, and we should have them, it's going to drive more innovation, more strategy change. But on the other side, it can backlash at a company if you don't meet your targets, right? So that's really this whole question. So what we try to do in WBCSD, I think we're the only sustainability group that has set up membership criteria. So we actually ask all of the members to have targets and to demonstrate progress on climate, on nature, on equity, and on governance. But it's not an easy one. And so it's this whole thing that we could impact a bit more.
Great. I'm going to stay with you for a minute because one of the things that you're focusing on right now is this idea of rebalancing protein, which I like as a term, but I think for a lot of us to be on the same page, it would be great if you could explain it.
Sure. So whichever reference you take in the world, often many of you will know of the Eat Lancet report, the Eat Lancet plates, but some people find it not universally applicable. So you can also look at WHO and FAO recommendations for healthy and sustainable diets. Whichever you look at, there is quite a number of changes that need to happen in the world. So depending on the region, we're either more or less far off what's the targets, okay? In general, what needs to change is, one, it's not in order of priority, but these are the 3 ones that are really important. One is we need people to have more access to fruit, vegetable, fiber, okay, in order to be more healthy. 2, from a healthy and sustainable point of view, we need people to access a diversity of proteins. So today, and the third one has to do with actually reducing the levels of sugar and salt and trans fats. Now, if we take protein, you can cluster the countries in 3 categories today. You have a number of countries where people do not have enough access to animal protein. Sub-Saharan Africa and other places where really it's super important from a micronutrient point of view that they have more access, whether it's eggs or chicken or whatever. And so those countries did not really like when they heard or when they hear from the Western world that they should cut down on animal proteins. That's important to keep in mind. The second group on the other extreme is the Western world, where all of us consume way too much animal protein compared to what's recommended. And given that animal proteins are the ones that have the most impact on greenhouse gas emissions, on deforestation, on biodiversity loss, it's really critical that we rebalance that. And then there is in the middle, all of the countries in transition, where demand is skyrocketing. If we look at the latest FAO projections, we know there's going to be much more demand for animal proteins. So how do we bend that curve here? So that's basically what we need to tackle. And there is not one solution that fits all. It's
Right.
really important when you want to work with farmers, with companies, and with, you call them eaters. It's a better word. It's a bit of a weird word, but it's better than consumers. It's really, it's going to be different things that motivate people, you know.
Right.
So for some people, it's a question of, can I afford it? For some other people, they can afford, but they have no knowledge. For others, it's going to be a sense of belonging that is very strong at the moment, that opposing a little bit, am I a vegetarian, flexitarian, meat eater? So all of these things are things that we need to better understand and to work with in order to really unlock these levers.
Thank you so much, Emily. And Sarah, I want to go back to you and talk about this idea of rebalancing protein. How does the Future Food Institute look at creating awareness and education about what protein needs are for an individual, let's say for an individual eater, and what that means for the planet, and how you sort of navigate that for folks, because it's very slippery, right, to talk about alternative proteins, which can include cellular agriculture or the Impossible Burger or beans, and our friend Paul with Beans is How. But, on the other side, you have industrial animal agriculture, which is causing a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions that everyone here has been talking about. So how do you balance that when people have, and I'm going to add another sort of layer of complexity to it, people also have personal connections to their food that are very, very deep?
And you're asking this question to an Italian lady, in a country
Human.
where basically this kind of solutions are being banned.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm the founder of the Future Food Institute. So, very tough question, but of course for us is a very big topic, because since we started, let's say Mark Post was one of our professors at the Food Innovation Program. So you remember, Joseph Puglisi also. So all good friends of us. We have been studying the topic since day one, and we're going to keep studying. But one solution don't fit for all. So of course, from kids at kindergarten up to policymakers and industry leaders, we always try to drive, say, a conversation, a debate, a critical debate, trying to understand within the 6 areas what's good, what's not, why it's good to adopt this solution in this country, why we need to find other solutions. And this is crucial. We have been oversimplifying, and actually
Right.
journalists played a critical, also bad role, because we were feeding all our eaters like dumb, yes or no.
Sure.
But this is not Manchester United against another team. We're talking about serious thing. And overall, supporting or not supporting a specific food chain in a different country can mean a lot. Can mean erasing traditions, yes, but what's the impact on the health? If I'm thinking about Italy, in the place where we are, the 50% of the lands have been abandoned in the last 10 years. Plus, if you check where the floods and the huge disaster happens, where these lands have been abandoned. Of course, if I'm thinking about the place where I'm talking about, they're all regenerative farmers, old people, abandoning lands, floods around. I don't want this kind of solution. I don't need that. I need to empower people to go back to the farm and take care of that.
Sure.
But if there are tons of other situations in which this solution can fit and are needed, we need to keep going, doing research and support them. What we're doing is trying to help people to debate, to reflect, to have critical perspective, to spend time in talking about that, because simplifying is a killer in this conversation.
Well, and I think you brought up something very crucial to all this, that many of these ideas are very place-based. They only work in certain, contexts, and they work in certain regions. They're not going to work for everyone. There is no one size fits all.
And then I want to connect to one of the 3 topics you were sharing. What we are sharing. We were talking about silo. One thing that we are not sharing as much as we can are data. We need to share data, because at the end we know that data are equal as money nowadays. We
That's
can
why
share
we
a lot
don't
of
share it.
words, but we're not sharing enough data. And we need data to let people understand. Data are something that makes all of us accountable.
Absolutely.
So the fact of sharing and putting together different stakeholders, is the public open to share data? Are private industries open to share their data? This is what we're trying to do. So we're working now on this project of a huge collab. We call it the algorithm of longevity, where actually I'm not crazy thinking like Elon Musk, I want to live 200 years. I don't care about that. But within longevity, we're talking about the longevity of our ecosystem, of our community. And within that, we're talking about fertility. Let's try to measure the fertility of our soil, how much is connected with the fertility of men and guys that are eating that food. Give me this data. How much is the value of this food? Because maybe this food can be sold in a pharmacy instead of a grocery store because this food is better than a medicine. And now we're starting to collect this data. There's basic research that are showing what's the impact of eating ancient grains fed with, grown with regenerative farming, and how much this can really have an impact, like 30, 70, 80% on the fertility of humans. And then you connect that to the fertility of the soil, and you know, those numbers are connected. And then you connect all the other dots, and we come up with prosperity, making prosperity. So creating thriving communities. And within, there are industries, schools, educational system, health system,
The
logistics.
ecosystem that you mentioned before.
So
And-
this
and-
algorithm is needed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alex, when we're talking about sort of this, you know, these place-based solutions and algorithm that Sarah mentioned, when the high-level working group on nutrition and health is looking at these issues, can you look at them in a place-based way? Can you look at them in a way that, you know, some things are going to work in the United States that are not going to work in Italy, some things are going to work in the UAE that are not going to work in Nigeria?
Absolutely. I mean, not even place-based. I think it's individual-based. I think one point that I want to share is like how deep food is important for each one of us. So that line, we are what we eat, is like so true. That's why it's part of our identity. So it goes beyond, it is even difficult to generalize. Of course, there's different countries with different food cultures, but I think it goes even deeper than that. Going to the point of where we need to tackle first in terms of ambition is where most of the emissions are, right? So according to the Eat Lancet landmark report, when you analyze the 3 sources of emissions from food production, food waste, and changing diets is the biggest one. And how do you change diet? You need to talk with the individual. You need people to understand that what they are eating is not sustainable, it's also not healthy. And it also has other types of very important impacts. One more point, just to go back to what our colleague from the was saying Emmeline was saying about ambition. I need to politely disagree because, as Secretary General of the United Nations has said, we are living not in climate change anymore. We are living in a global boiling moment. This is an emergency. So when you say it's realistic is to align our emissions with what science is saying. And if leaders don't think this is credible, we need new leaders.
Thank you, Alex.
Whoa.
Emmeline,
Can I
I'd love
just
to give you a
react on that?
chance to
Yeah.
respond.
I think there was a misunderstanding. I never said that the leaders did not agree with the targets. That would be a problem. I think that's something we just heard in the news about one specific leader, but that's not what most of the leaders are saying. No, I was just saying that as a company, we want to hold companies accountable for their progress. And you were mentioning the level of ambition, and you were saying rightfully that we need to go beyond thinking what is feasible today, set higher targets, and try to identify the innovation. And I'm just saying that's the tricky part, of course, because as a leader, when you're held accountable, but it's the same for a president, the reason why a lot of countries do not want to be more ambitious is that don't want to be then blamed for not achieving what they set up as ambitions. That's
Sure.
all.
I think we
Right.
should move on from this point. So, Emmeline, I want to go back to to proteins and the idea of, alternative proteins and plant proteins benefiting the environment, farmers, and eaters, consumers. How do we manage all of those things when there's a climate emergency, as Alex said? Do we have the time to invest in these plant-based alternatives that might be highly ultra-processed or take a lot of R&D? Do we have time to do that, or should we just eat beans, Emmeline?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah, that's a really difficult one because actually we have beans, they're easy. And by the way, they used to be a big part of what people used to be eating everywhere in the world, right? And it's only over the last the last 1 or 2 generations that we've had the Industrial Revolution and we started to move, towards feed and animal production at wide scale. So I'm totally with you. The problem is a question of, and I liked what you were saying, because I often think a bit too much square in terms of accountability. And you were talking about building trust and having a movement, I often take the debated example of Tesla and Elon Musk. But the point is that if Tesla really made a breakthrough and now is showing the way towards electrification of cars, it's not because it wanted to get people on board because of climate impact. It's not. They found a way to make it sexy and build a movement, and people want it. And really, I think it's the only way forward. Is we need to find a way to instigate a movement that will probably relate to very different angles in different countries. For some, it could be if you go, let's say, in Nigeria or some of the other countries, they used to be very strong, or in India, it was very strong already in terms of beans and whatever. So it's about finding ways to make it, sexy again. And then in other places, indeed, if you take basically some of the Western countries where people seem to want something that tastes like a steak,
right?
That's where it's more complex.
Right.
And that's where, at the moment, the only solution that has been found is indeed using quite a number of ingredients, quite a level of processing, to have something like the Impossible Burger that just tastes like the other one. When I was discussing with one of our members, BCG, who is very active as well on alternative proteins, they were saying that we will only be able to get it to take off if we are able to do 2 things. One is to get the taste right.
Right.
And again, Brian, I know with Griffith Food you're working so much on that. That's one of the hurdles. Get the taste right that really people are after. And then, of course, it needs to be competing from a price perspective. And here we get into the complexity of policymaking. We know that there is so many subsidies that go today to certain types of ingredients in production. And as long as these subsidies remain, then it's detrimental to the alternatives. It's the same as if you take renewable energy and traditional energy. As long as the subsidies go so strong into the mainstream thing you want to try and get away from, it's very difficult for the alternatives to take off.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Sarah and Alex, technology and innovation is obviously disrupting the food system in many, many ways. Some for worse with ultra-processed foods, some for better. How do we make more of the better choices when we're thinking about using innovation and technology?
Let's say, I was reflecting on what she was saying, because I think that there are some aspects that are missing that are very important. When we're talking about diet, people is just sticking on ingredients and how much of that we have to eat, and we see the pyramids and the plates and so on. But diet, and the word diet means dieta in Greek. Dieta is lifestyle. So we are always just narrowing the number and the grams and the liters and how much and how many times per week and so on. We're missing the cultural part. We're missing the human connection. We're missing the time we're spending around the table. We're missing the time in which families were cooking together. You just have Thanksgiving. We are approaching Christmas. In other countries, they are celebrating other things. Food has been always part of our culture. It's part of our rituals. As we always just consider our blood, the pressure. Okay, I think that there are many other parameters we need to bring in this conversation. This conversation, we're always out of this kind of gathering. And anyway, now we are starting measuring also this with data.
Sure.
We in our campus, we are combining the data about the carbon capturing capacity of the soil, the nutrients, the microbiome, and so on, with neuroscience. How much the people living there, having this kind of rhythm of life, spending this time around the table, eating slowly, talking while eating, spending time preparing the table. How much all of that is impacting on the brain's health. Because anyway, today we're not talking about loneliness and all the other diseases that are affecting the planet. Because not here, but yesterday and tomorrow, if we're going to open up the newspapers, these are going to be anyway relevant issues of our planet.
Right.
And food needs to be part also of this conversation. And I think that we need to bring around this topic also these aspects of food.
I mean, I think what you're talking about is well-being. It's the well-being of all of us. It's the well-being of the planet. It's not just about health or diet choices. It's well-being.
100%.
Yeah.
And also, when we're talking about longevity, I don't care about my longevity. I care about the extinction of our humankind.
The planet will go on, but we might not.
Exactly. And let's reflect on living heritage, culture, relationship, because we are humans. And this is what is making us different from anyone else, anything else.
There's a reason agriculture has the word culture in it, because it's so fundamental to how we...
Yes, yes.
Alex, I want to turn to you because, you know, it's not just about technological innovations, it's about social innovations and you know, how they can disrupt what we've been talking about, how they can make us feel better about health and well-being and change how companies are what they're producing and what they're investing in.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a key part of the Innovation Hub is the expansion of what innovation is beyond technology. Although technology is a central part of what we need for a sustainable future. There are amazing technologies from the members of the group, but even beyond, for example, I don't know if you have heard about this company from Finland called Solar Foods. They have this advanced fermentation, and they have partnerships with space companies, and they are trying for astronauts, but if they scale, can be part of the solution. These microorganisms for protein. But you're right, we need also policy innovation. We need also policymakers to be bold and to pursue this agenda. And we have recent examples in Denmark and in Korea that they are doing a country-level roadmap to reduce meat consumption. Another type of innovation is in the terms of open and very important platforms like big awards. So we have all heard about the Earth Shot. Next year, there will be an Earth Shot for food, for plant-based innovation on this prize that is developed by the Prince of Wales. So that's an innovation. That's areas that keeps me hopeful and excited. Another thing that you said are social movements, pressure, are people from the ground. So, for example, some initiatives that I'm very much familiar with is plant-based universities. So students are campaigning for in their canteen to serve more healthy and plant foods, whole plant foods. Or our friends from Plant-Based Treaty, they're doing amazing work going to cities and making cities commit also to reduce their emissions from the food systems. And bringing back to their points, is all these levels, but it goes back to the individual. It's an individual choice. And at the same time, I don't see the tension. We need infrastructure, we need policies, but at the same time, we need also the bottom-up individual change.
Emily, if I can turn back to you, the theme of this is, you know, balancing the plate for healthier and sustainable diets. When you're looking at the work of WBCSD in a sort of a critical way, do you think you're able to do that with your members? Really look at how that they can rebalance the plate?
I think what Sarah was saying earlier, she was talking about diets and the whole culture piece. But one of the challenges for us is that a diet is made up of a number of products and ingredients. And so for us, the difficulty is that any type of ingredient, you know, how can I say that? In a diet, let's say you can eat a yogurt, but you don't just eat a yogurt.
Right.
So you can work with companies. If I take the example of dairy, for instance, you know, companies are really working on reducing greenhouse gas emissions because they have targets. They're looking at really the two paths, which are how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions from dairy production? So some of them are signatories of the Global Methane Hub that they've announced a few days ago. But they're also looking at, mixing, increasingly adding plant-based alternatives, and they invest very much into that as well. But the difficulty is, how do we aggregate this, and how do we make them work together so that in the end you provide a healthy diet? Another big issue I have to share is that unless there is regulation, it's difficult when there is no level playing field. It's very difficult for a company to basically advance on their own. So I'll share, one of our very well-known companies that sells yogurts. They've made really strong commitments, for instance, on reducing sugar, and they've lost market share.
Right.
Because people go to other yogurts because they taste better, because they're more sugary. So this whole thing that we also need to navigate around the regulation to install a level playing field, and then they can really compete and innovate and deliver against.
I mean, it reminds me of Campbell's Soup had the same sort of issue several years ago where they reduced salt, and then people just, if we're not all on the same playing field, people will just pick a different product.
Yeah, I was discussing with somebody from the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and he was saying, it's just a fact that we are more attracted. I love, pasta and broccoli and a lot of Italian things. But naturally, we tend to be attracted to sugar and salt and whatever. So naturally, we tend to be attracted to that. And then companies, they are asked by their shareholders when they're not family owned to also, continue to grow and sell more. So it's the natural path that, you go to what is the most asked by consumers. So unless there is regulation, it's very difficult, to say, well, all I'm going to do is now much more healthy, because then you need to find a way that makes it more tasty or appealing. And so there is a lot to be done around shifting mindset and understanding, absolutely, and the role of labeling and education, that's really important, but it's not going to be sufficient.
Right, that regulation is also very, very needed. Sarah, where does the technology come back into this? The Future Food Institute is looking at the future. Innovation, technology. We're not just talking about, alternative proteins. We're talking about all kinds of different innovations. Can you talk a little bit about, what you're seeing, what you're predicting? What will we be talking about at COP this time next year? Will it be, novel proteins, or will it be something very different?
I think that technology is the most important ally we have. We have not been talking about the impact of AI and many other things today. We don't have time, but anyway, technology is needed if we want to scale up regen models, because at the end we cannot just be in love with very naive farmers, but we need to make it applicable and scale it up also for big industries. So we need the technologies, we need numbers, we need to improve innovation as much as we can and as fast as we can. And this is what we're doing at the campus, where I was talking big, small, private, but farmers, traditional farmers, are now hosting EAT food test farms. So with the very old farmer, we are combining the latest technologies. And this is our test farm for EAT food, just to give you an example. So now technologies need to be accelerated, because we need to give them the power to say, okay, this soil has this quality, is something that is declared.
But I think you hit a sweet spot that I've mentioned a few times today on other panels. This combination of high and low technologies is really, really important.
Crucial.
And I don't think we recognize that enough.
But again, let's bring back, it's not going to be just technology saving us. We need to bring critical thinking, ethical perspective, it's needed or not.
Caring and sharing.
Caring and sharing, but let's overall involve youth, involve girls, involve ladies. We are running together with EAT Food the EWA project, Women Empowerment in Agriculture. Those women are coming up with solutions that no one else could ever thought before.
And no one's paid attention to them before.
Exactly. And we are surprised their fellows and buddies and brothers said, I didn't know my sister thought about that. Yeah, wake up. So this is what we need, and this is what we are trying to do, connecting these dots, because the people we are working with are all year around this triangle.
Alex, how can the Global Innovation Hub support some of the things that Sarah has been talking about, youth and women?
Yes, I think
use this idea that we need to move beyond the concept of emission reductions. So I think we can engage youth we change the narrative. So let's decarbonize. This is not something that mobilizes people. So the narrative that we promote at the Innovation Hub is that we need to build a future for 11 billion flourished lives of human beings. And this future needs to be aligned with the targets that are not set by an agreement, but by science and by the atmospheric physics, right? So sounds like a small shift, but it changes everything. Because especially from the Global South, if you talk about emission reductions, and the youth in the Global South, what type of emissions they are going to reduce. But if you talk about creating a better future that's aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement, of the Sustainable Development Goals, I think we can have everybody on board with that vision.
Great points. I want to turn it to questions from the audience. It's been a great panel, but there's so much to unpack here, and I feel like many of you will have questions that I could not come up with. And we have a roving mic, right? That one up there.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Amos Tai from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So previously, I'm a researcher and climate scientist. I published a paper on how, meat production actually contribute to nearly 20% of PM 2.5 problems in China, which then got viciously attacked by the mainland media because a lot of people are so upset with telling them not to eat meat or things like that because there are a lot of social cultural factors associated with, we are now growing enormously as an economy. So we have every right to eat meat like the Western world used to be. All things like that. I have been viciously attacked online with a lot of comments. So since then, I've been talking to different people. How do you think we can address cultural specific stigma associated with plant-based diet? Because there's a prevalent concept of, eating plant-based food is associated with being weak and very deeply in the Chinese culture. So and this is a really big nation, with a lot of meat production.
Great,
so
I think we have the question.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Emmeline, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to try that. Thanks so much. I'd love to talk a little bit later about that separately. Yeah, no, that's one of the big problems is the pushback. As soon as you seem to be touching the stake of people, and it's like, this is my entitlement. Actually, not just in China. In the US, it's the same. And so that's why we think that often you're going to get people on board. It's the same as for anything you're trying to change, consumption of alcohol, cigarettes, and whatever. Basic social psychology shows that you're going to get people to change if you motivate them about an opportunity, not a loss. So if it's about you're going to lose your meat, then people are going to be very defensive. So if we can build a movement and inspire people about, hey, this is cool, this is sexy, the Impossible Burger or whatever. I think it's our best chance. But it's not easy. And definitely, as I said before, it needs to be done much more at the regional level. Now, in China specifically, we're also involved with WAFI, which is a new effort of the Minister of Agriculture. They're taking climate change very seriously, obviously, as well. And so there's going to be probably some support from the government. But we need to find the right angle, not to polarize people, and as opposed to really inspire people about, I like what you said, a future. It's true, we're not going to inspire people with decarbonization, unfortunately, but a good future, a better path for the Chinese people in developing themselves and not doing the mistakes that others have done, hopefully.
Thank you
we'd
so
love
much.
to exchange more on that.
Thank you so much, Emmeline. Yes, of course. Any other questions? I'm going to go to you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jolijn Zwart van Kessel. I'm from Food Valley from the Netherlands. I've got a question actually from my colleague from the Netherlands. Her name is Judith van der Horst. She's the innovation lead Healthier Foods at Food Valley. She started a community called the Healthier Foods Community, where companies work together on trying to really work on more healthier diets together. And I was wondering, because they did a whole analysis, they talked to over 100 international companies about what they experienced were the barriers, and they try to tackle it together now in the community. But I was wondering what the panel would say that this community should be working on to really build and together, work together side by side as a level playing field on steps to take. I wonder what your answers would be.
Sarah, would you like to take this on first?
Yeah, I know.
You don't need the mic.
I don't need the mic.
Hand it to me.
I thought I could give it back.
Okay. So I think that this is needed. So the opinion is we need to try to have this kind of crowd to create consensus as much as we can. So of course, within your ecosystem, because Food Valley is an ecosystem, you are already, exactly, but overall you started at the beginning. We were talking about 10 years ago and more, but we were coming in Wageningen, discovering Food Valley Netherlands, because you were the first one moving on and creating an ecosystem. I think that this kind of projects need to be empowered as much as we can. We need that. We need that. And in the Netherlands, I would say, between you, Food Inspiration, and all the networks that are connected, and if I see that, also the slow food movement in the Netherlands is more powerful than in any other place. While you have Mark Post creating Moza Meat. This is showing, I think, a very healthy approach to innovation, because we are creating the space for this kind of conversation. So from my perspective, this is something that we need to empower and give space more and more to all of that.
Right.
And we need to create examples. Also answering to, I don't remember your name, Hong Kong, and what in Hong Kong happened with Green Monday. Green Monday, I think, was probably the best example at the beginning. He created an example. He didn't start just talking, but he started opening up shops, creating tasty recipe, involving people, having experiences. He started from experiences to create the trust. You have real opportunities to show people, touch, eat, bite. This is what we need to do. So for your affiliates, I would say, go on as much as you can. Go on as much as you can.
Thank you. I know we have other questions over here.
Can we just give the floor to one of the companies on the...
I already gave this man the floor in the black shirt. Okay, I need the mic. I can't walk to you. My mic will fall off.
I saw that.
Hello, I'm Peter, and I work for an international organization with cities on urban sustainability and also food around the globe. And this was really an inspiring panel, and I don't say that after every panel that I'm listening to. So I think when we talk about future food, it comes to me that it's really about the slogan is back to the future. Because also yesterday I was in a panel with you, Danny, and there was this Native American saying how they would take colonial ingredients out of the food. Or we had in our session with Cities and Food and Climate, we had an African vegan chef, and she would go to communities and say, look, your food was not meat-driven, so bring back nutritious food based on nutritious ingredients. And after all, nobody wants to eat a plant-based dish. You want to eat a delicious dish. And the problem that we have, and we work a lot on school meals, for instance, that many children, the taste is now very limited. It's like pasta in bianco, like spaghetti white without nothing, or fries, and it's everywhere the same. It's getting very homogeneous. So back to the future, back to the other tastes, back to the grains, back to the healthy food that is like medicine. So I found that very good, and I think that is a nice slogan.
Thank you so much. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Brian Griffith, Griffith Foods, and we're a member of the WBCSD. We design and scale recipes for large brands. So we kind of sit behind in a B2B relationship. And so what we're trying to do is that the emotional connection that was spoken about around food, it is universal. When we want to go back to indigenous diets and food that was naturally nutritious, over thousands of years were selected and were used by indigenous communities, those are the types of ingredients we want to design in to tasty, delicious, nutritious, and sustainable food. So these are actually the opportunities. Going back to consumer demand, we want to tap into old traditions. We want to make sure that we make affordable and accessible food that actually is using ingredients that are regenerative. So when we kind of look at the opportunity, we need so much of the blended innovation around whether it's cultivated or really novel approaches to new proteins, because we do have a future production challenge that maybe even uses upcycled waste as a medium in which to create it. We also need to tap into these regenerative and ancient practices that actually improve food production in terms of ingredients. So this kind of chain of both education, tapping into this emotional state that is so powerful around food and the human condition in terms of creating equitable access to food by utilizing ingredients that we want to repopularize, shall we say,
Absolutely.
is a really great opportunity. So I think if we think about what's in front of us in terms of the different perspectives, what are those unifying factors that we can gather around, whether it's government and regulation, consumer attitudes, and actually delicious, nutritious, and sustainable food?
Great, thank you so much. I want to make sure that the final question is actually a question to the panel from the audience. So can you come up here for this mic if I get up my... Remember, an actual question.
Yes, it is an actual question. Ambika Hinani, Sinara Bio, cell-based dairy company. I just wanted to know a little bit more about the power of nudges, because I heard you mention a really interesting point about, removing sugar from a yogurt, and then it wasn't popular. So I just want to know if there was, nudges could be used to sort of convince people to eat healthier, more sort of protein diversification.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we commissioned a report looking in the UK at how can we get people to eat more healthy and more sustainable food. And what I learned there is that it's not British people. It's like you need to segment people because their hurdles and the levers for change are going to be very different. So there were 6 groups in the UK, for instance. It's not just based on age, or it's not just based on how much money they make. It's really what prevents them or actually are going to motivate them to change. And like I said before, for some it will be access. And I understand what Brian was saying, making sure that food is affordable is like a necessity, first of all. But then really the sense of belonging, again, to what group do you identify to? And then thereafter, the knowledge as well. I was very surprised, but a lot of people said, I don't know how to cook a vegetarian meal. I don't cook. Like this is, coming back to that. This is becoming very lost as well. And that's why I think we need a diversity of solutions. We need to look at the different people and the countries, etc. But we need to develop a number of solutions, sometimes poorly simple, bean-based for some, much more elaborate burger for others, so that we can really get everybody to find a solution and something that they can rely on.
No one size fits all, clearly. I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank all of you for being here today and your excellent questions. Please give a round of applause.
Thank you, Dani.